Straw Hut Media.
Hi, my name is Michael Madsen, and welcome to my podcast, American Badass. Thanks for tuning in. I'm kind of excited to introduce my first guest and my good friend, Bruce Dern. You've probably heard of him, and if you haven't, you should have. Or I should say, you've probably seen him but didn't even know it. Bruce is a tremendous actor with a career spanning over 6 decades. And let me tell you, that's a very long time to be acting, especially if you do it as well as he does. I've been around him and I know what I'm talking about. He's been in some iconic film and TV shows like as far back as Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Route 66, Sea Hunt, and many, many more. We've also done 2 pictures together, The Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We got directed by Quentin, thank God, and he saved the day. So I think you get the gist. The man has quite an impressive career, so to speak, in cinema. And I'm so happy and lucky to have him as my friend and my show, being this the first one. Hey, Bruce, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Hey, man. Welcome to American Badass. I don't know if you appreciate that title, but...
It's okay, bud. For you, it's always all good. You know, how are you?
I was going to ask you the same question. It's quite an honor for me that you're my first guest and the first time around on the show, and I just love you for that, Bruce. I have missed you, pal.
Yeah, and I miss you. I mean, it's just to go to see each other every day for almost a year and a half and then miss you. And I'm just now finishing your book of poetry. But there's gems in there, man. There's real gems. I mean, what's great about it, it's also a psychological thriller, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, you get it. You've always got it.
You know what? You get it too, but that's why we're friends.
To get it all, and to be able to write it down from the heart is fabulous. And that's what you've done.
For those of you who don't know this about me, I also write poetry, and the book that Bruce is talking about is called The Complete Works of Michael Madsen. And then I found out that Bruce had a great uncle who was a prolific writer and poet called Archibald MacLeish. One of those things about Bruce that, you think you know everything about the guy, and then you find out something like that. And it was just amazing. And so honored to have him on here and to even have someone like that in his past.
Congratulations on this thing that you're doing. I think it's
thank you,
terrific.
Bruce.
And a perfect title.
Yeah, I think it works. It gives a nice introduction, and it's. I was going to say to you that I had no idea a couple things I found out about you, and because you were talking about poetry, you had a grand uncle that won a Pulitzer Prize for poetry.
He won 5. Archibald MacLeish.
My God, Bruce. I never
he won
heard
5, and he ended his life as the. He not only won 5, but he was also Librarian of Congress for 21 years.
Oh my God!
And he's my grandfather's brother.
Wow.
My middle name is MacLeish, and growing up, we finally sold it. But the family owned a department store downtown called Carson, Peary and Scott. And it was a huge, department store. And now it's the building is still there because it's a historical landmark. It was built in 18-something or other, 1896 or something like that. And my grandfather, Bruce MacLeish, who was Archie's brother, he ran it. And my mother, who was the daughter of Bruce MacLeish, I grew up his big property was right next door to our big property on Lake Michigan. So my grandfather raised me more than my father did. My father was there. My father's a big lawyer. My God, not only was his father Secretary of War, but my father's law partner and my godfather ran for president twice, and that was Adlai Stevenson.
Bruce, you know what? After all the things we've talked about, you never told me that.
When I wrote my book, I wrote it because I wanted people to understand Laura and I didn't fall off a fucking turnip truck.
Well, like I mentioned, Bruce was in some pretty iconic stuff. I happened to catch an episode of Gunsmoke the other day where he was in his early days, before he was even going to be on the show. The Gunsmoke was a Western television series from the 1950s. Yep, you heard correct. That's quite a long time ago. And it actually started as a radio show. James Arness was Matt Dillon. And what a wonderful show it was. It started out in black and white, and it was on for a long time. One of the leading characters in one of the episodes was actually portrayed by Burt Reynolds.
The neat thing about Gunsmoke were, if you got killed, you could do one every year. But if you lived, because residuals had just come in, they would never have you back because they didn't want to pay you to be a running character, But Burt Reynolds was a running character for a year.
Yeah.
Buck Taylor was a running character for a year.
Warren Oates was in there a couple times too, wasn't he?
Yeah, but Gunsmokes were fun. And, one day I went to work, and the ADs on Gunsmoke that particular season were Walter Hill, the director.
Oh, my gosh.
And John Milius.
Oh, my gosh, Bruce.
He was the second. And I go to work, and Walter says to me, "Hey, Bruce, we got a big surprise for you today." And I said, "Oh, my God." And he said,
"What's it going to be?"
Put your wardrobe on and go up on the set. So I put my wardrobe on, and I went on the set. And the lady playing my mother was Betty Davis.
Oh, Jesus. God, you know what?
And
Bruce, you were so good in that episode. You completely flipped me out. You look like you were 25 years old.
I got tears in my eyes, and she turned right in front of her, and she said, "What's the matter with you, Bruce Dern?" And I said, "Betty, it's a Gunsmoke." And she said, "Well, who's going to pay for my cigarettes?"
I saw her in an episode of Wagon Train.
And also use the phrase, "Get over it." And I thought, my God, here's a 5-time Oscar nominee doing a fucking Gunsmoke. And so that was fun about those. But you know something? In that season, I remember 1963 through 1967, Universal Pictures did 14 hours a week.
Oh, my God.
14 hours a week of cowboy shows.
Did you ever go on The Rifleman?
No, that stopped just before I came. I did, Wagon Train, Laramie, and in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was in the pilot of Lancer.
Oh God, I'm sure Quentin probably knew that.
Which I think had to do something with, and Jim Stacy was Lancer.
Wow.
And what I loved
was that before his accident?
Huh?
Didn't James Stacy have a bad motorbike accident?
It was just before his accident, maybe 2 years before his accident. But what I love about Quentin is the fact that he took the time to feature James Stacy in Once Upon a Time.
Well, that's the kind of guy he is, Bruce. He gave me a career.
And the guy in 1974, Jesus Christ, that's before the Pleistocene.
That was before I tried to enlist, yeah.
He I did a movie with Kirk Douglas called Posse, a Western. He and I were their 2 stars. And he hired Jim Stacy with the one arm and one leg to be a big role in the movie. And I thought that was great. And I started realizing if there's 2 things, Michael, that I miss today in the business more than anything else. Number 1 is there's not much respect for what went before.
Duh, buddy. You know, I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to say the same damn thing.
It's number 2, there's no more handshakes. No one has to look you in the eye anymore. The bullshit can fly all day, every day.
It does, yeah.
And it's taken the heart out of what we got in the business for. And if somebody says, well, I'm 85, and if someone says, but you're still doing it. I see that you're working all this and do that and that. You're still winning an award here and there. And why do you still go on? Because I'm still trying to get better. That's why.
Well, you were pretty damn good.
And I wasn't bad in Nebraska. I was pretty good in Nebraska. And but you kind of climbed the same ladder I did in a way, but you went to Europe. I was too fucking stupid to think, well, I'll go to Europe. You know, I was just thrilled to get a wagon train.
Well, I mean, you were running around doing marathons before that, weren't you?
I'm sorry?
Did you actually run 300 marathons?
Oh, no, I've run more than that. Yeah, I ran, well, let's put it this way. I've had 6 Runner's World covers. And in one of them, when I did Nebraska 5 years ago when it came out, a Runner's World guy came and interviewed me and stayed with me. I mean, he didn't stay in my fucking house, but I mean, I went and met him each day for 2 or 3 days, and we ran. And they congratulated me in the article for running 105,000 miles.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
4 times around the world. That's how far I've run.
I don't think I could make that.
Oh, no.
I couldn't make it on that one, buddy.
Couldn't make it on your motorcycle. No, but I mean,
I wanted to be a NASCAR driver. I never wanted to be an actor in the first place.
Right. In that era, the 60s and 70s, when you didn't work, you had nothing to do. So I just ran. And we would run 4,000 miles a year for 40 years. Good
God almighty.
And it's sick. We were junkies. But junkies of that.
You have to be.
And the reason I do it, and I still do it, is because 2 things. It's honest because the watch doesn't lie.
Yeah, buddy. It's
And number 2 is I'm going somewhere on my own.
Well, okay, on that note, I'll let you guys out there listening to go somewhere on your own, whatever that means to you, is something you probably couldn't understand. But it makes a lot of sense to me, especially coming from him. But make sure you come back, because after the break, Bruce and I are going to talk a little bit about his movie, Nebraska, which really was a tremendous bit of filmmaking and directed by Alexander Payne. Welcome back to American Badass. Thanks for tuning in. I'm speaking with my friend Bruce Dern today, who, apart from being an outstanding actor, has, as it turns out, ran over 300 marathons, which is approximately 4 times around the world. Those knees, man, quite an accomplishment. But let's hear some more about Nebraska, the film that landed Bruce a win in Cannes for his stellar performance. If you haven't seen it yet, you should really check it out. It's a brilliant black and white comedy drama with Will Forte and Bob Odenkirk alongside Bruce. Anyway, the process of making the movie Nebraska with Bruce was also pretty unique, especially these days.
It's interesting. When I went to do Nebraska, Alexander Payne said to me the first day, and we were a little Fremont, Nebraska, or some town like that.
Yeah.
And it was cold. It was late October. And he said to me the first day, he says, do you see anything today on the set you've never seen on your first day on a movie before? I said, you know what, bud? I do. I see everybody seems to be pulling their oar. And he said to me, well, hopefully that's because we have 92 people here and 81 have worked every day on every film I've ever made.
Oh, they had you too.
So you, sir, can dare to risk. And this is Faden Papa Michael, and he's your cameraman. I said, I know, we met yesterday. And I wonder if you'd do something for Faden and I. We're not sure you ever did. And I said, what's that? Let us do our jobs. And I said, meaning? He said, never, ever show us anything. Let us find it.
Yeah.
And Pacino came up to me at a party and said, you know, everybody back at the Actors Studio is talking about your performance in Nebraska. I haven't seen it. So Brad Gray was at the party. He was the head of Paramount then. And I went to him and I said, you know, Al has not seen Nebraska. And he said, tell him he'll have a copy of it on his a doorstep with his newspaper tomorrow morning. The next day at noon, he called me up. Dead silent. He said, Bruce, it's Al. I said, yes, sir. He said, dead silence for about maybe 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, he said, Bruce, I never saw the work.
You know something? I did Donnie Brasco with Al.
From you.
And he's a wonderful guy. I had the same kind of thing with him.
He said, no, I'm dead serious. And I told him what Alexander said to me about never show us anything. We'll find it. And he said, I have tears in my eyes because you knew right then you had a partner. And I don't know that I've ever had a partner.
You know, he was kind of like that. I remember when we did Donnie Brasco, there was a point where obviously I didn't want to read for it because I'm a terrible cold reader. I just can't do it. I don't know why, but I just can't. I'm so terrible at the audition thing.
Aren't you the one that led the Tigers into the restaurant?
Yes. Yeah, I sure did, but I almost didn't get that.
Is that the only time you worked in a movie with him?
I wouldn't. That's the only time I did with him. But I wouldn't have got in it if it wasn't for him because I didn't want to read for it, and they kept, at me to please read, and I kept explaining to them that I really didn't want to because if I did, they'd just flat out turn me down, and I wouldn't be able to get in the picture. And
I never read. I made a point of not reading, and particularly reading for Vicky fucking Thomas.
I couldn't do it. I said, listen, I'm not going to do it. And it went on.
I didn't do it.
Like
I can't read.
It's the worst experience in the world. And finally I said, look, you guys, you might as well move on. And then about 3 days later, they asked me, would you meet Al? Just please, would you say hi to Al? And I said, well, sure.
And you didn't know Quentin then?
No, it was before Quentin. And I said, I think I had done Reservoir Dogs. And I don't remember what year it was, but I had to fly to New York to meet Al. Are you still there?
Yeah.
I heard some beeping sound. So I had to fly to New York to meet Al, which I said, sure, And I mean, who wouldn't, right? And it was like meeting like some, it was a big deal to meet him. It was all kind of hallways and doors. And
he must have fallen in love with you, man.
Well, I went in the room and he was standing and he had his back to me and he was looking out the window. And I didn't know what to do. I was just standing there. And so I turned around and there was a bookcase and I picked up a book and I was just thumbing through this book and all of a sudden I hear that voice, "You like that book?" And I'm like, but he hadn't even turned around and I realized he could see the reflection of me in the window that he was staring out of. And,
oh my God.
And I said, "I don't even know what book it is." And he goes, "Oh, okay. Okay." So, and then he turns around and he goes, "You read the script?" And I go, "Yeah, I read the script." He goes, "You like it?" And I go, yeah, I think it's pretty good. And he goes, "Oh, you read the book?" I go, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did." He goes, "Oh, okay. So what don't you like about it?" And I said, "Well, the real Sonny Black used to take care of pigeons up on his roof. And in the screenplay, my character has no birds. I don't have, why can't I have the pigeons?" And he goes, "I get the birds. The birds are for me. You don't get the birds. I get the birds." And I said, "Okay, all right," which he didn't end up having in the movie. But at the time,
when you think of it, I'm just thinking of it now. Quentin likes to every now and then give praise to what went before, and Marlon had birds in on the waterfront on the roof.
Yeah, he did. That's why I wanted to do it. I thought it was a neat kind of a thing. It was an interesting part of Sonny.
That's the only day that I met him in person that one night, and the next day I never met him after that. But he has always been extremely complimentary to me. He says, "How come that night that I talked to him, he says, how come you and I have never worked together before?" I said, "Fuck you, prick. How many times did you turn and give Jimmy Kahn a fucking part instead of me?"
He said, that was it.
Anyway, one thing that I when I taught acting for a long time, actually one of my students was Ellen Burstyn.
Wow.
And then we did that movie, The King of Marvin Gardens, together, she, me, and Jack, and we were all about the same age. And so that was nice. But the thing that I remember the most is the one thing that you never learn at the actor's studio or in an acting class or anything else. How do you get the fucking part?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I 3 years ago, Laura and I gave an Academy Award to Lynn Stallmaster at the ceremony, and he was the first casting director to ever win an Oscar, and we presented it to him. And he told this story that is in my book also, that when we went on interviews, Jack Nicholson, Harry Dean Stanton, and me always went together on interviews because we were all right for the same part, we thought. And they were always the fifth cowboy from the right or some shit like that. So
yeah.
we went to see him for a Gunsmoke.
Oh
and
God.
He said, Harry went in first and he came out. Jack went in, then he came out, then it was my turn. And I realized by that time, I'd been doing this now for about 3.5 years and not really getting anywhere except doing the same kind of thing. I go into his office and he's on the phone. Okay. And I realized that you don't have 15 minutes, you have 5 minutes.
Right.
And so I grabbed the phone out of his hand and I slapped it down on the cradle. And I said, "Look, I got 2.5 minutes left of my life. And you're on the phone trying to call whatever you're trying to call." And he said, "Turn around and get the hell out of my office."
Oh my
and
God.
Get this, and take the 2 yokels outside with you. Carlos Yoko.
Oh,
he said, "With you, because you have no respect for the business, you have no respect for what I do or anything else, and you will never have a career." And so I open the door, and Jack and Harry stand up immediately, and I get about 10 steps toward the exit door, but I'm out of his room. He's right behind me. And he said, by the way, Mr. Dern, if you are ever in anything, please let me know. I walked back the 10 feet to him, and I grabbed the lapel of his jacket, and I said, "Mr. Stallmaster, I'm in your room.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He
Wow.
hired me, and he made Jack and Harry Dean and my career in television. And he made it because the same thing I was going to say when you went to meet Pacino. It's obvious when people meet you, you are the real deal. And I think Al is the real deal.
Welcome back to American Badass. This is my first episode of the show ever, actually. And today's guest is actor Bruce Dern. You know, I class Bruce as a legend. And Bruce and I spoke about what it means to be real. And it's hard to describe, but we all feel it and recognize it when we see actors being real. And Bruce and I, having worked with Quentin, we know he's always looking for what's real and gives actors the space to create those moments. And that's what's so great about them both. What's pretty amazing is that Bruce has actually coined a term after his acting, because his particular moments have actually been named, which is pretty incredible in itself. They're called Dernsies. And those Dernsies obviously aren't in the original script, along with a lot of things I've said along the way. In fact, I heard that Dernsies was originally spoke by Jack Nicholson. Anyway, because they both evolve spontaneously. And in many ways, they are one of the reasons why directors love to work with Bruce. And that's definitely true for Quentin. And I bet many others. Looking back at where Bruce started, however, it's no surprise. Because Bruce is a part of the Actor Studio alumni. And for those of you out there listening, the Actor Studio was truly a birthplace of great actors. It was founded by Elia Kazan, Robert Lewis, and Cheryl Crawford. And later on, led by Lee Strasberg, and brought forward some of the best actors of all time, including Marilyn Monroe, Marlon Brando, and another one of them, for instance, is Harvey Keitel, who is godfather to my son Max. Harvey's another friend of mine who I've worked with on Reservoir Dogs when he played Mr. White. And he was wonderful in that picture.
I was 1 week in a school in Philadelphia where I quit college to go and find a school. And I realized after one week, there were three things you had to do. One, you had to go to New York. Two, you had to try and become a member of the Actors Studio. And three, you had to work for Mr. Kazan. Those were the three things. So anyway, later on I did that, and here I am. And they said, since you have no acting experience, and since you have no bad habits yet, we would like to do something with you I don't think even Stanislavski did with a student. We would like you to work as often as you can in front of us, as many times as you can get on. I said, the lists are forever. And Gad said, put his hand over his mouth and turned to me and he says, erase names. So I'd go to the chart and I'd say, I put me down. But anyway, and I said, and what's going to happen? We would like you for 1 year to do scenes in which you never have an obligation to dialogue. So for 1 year, Michael, every scene I did in the studio, I was a silent partner. So what they did was they trained me to behave from me.
Yeah.
And when Gads put me on the plane to come to California, then 2.5 years later, he said, look, when you get out there, nobody's going to know who the fuck you are. You're not a conventional leading man. You know, he's the first one to use that comment to me. He says, you're going to be the fifth cowboy from the right. So you understand that you better be the most honest, unique fifth cowboy from the right anybody ever saw. And number two, don't ever, ever tell a director what you're going to do before take one.
Ah, God, Bruce, you know what? I do the same damn thing.
I said,
You're
how do
also
I
the
get
fifth
away with
cowboy
that?
from the right that only.
I
You're
said, how the
fifth
fuck am I
cowboy
going to
from
get
the
away
right
with
that
that?
killed John Wayne. I mean, how many fifth cowboys from the right got to do that?
How am I going to get away with that? And he said, it's simple. The director has something you'll never had. I said, what's that? Take two. So make sure yours gets recorded.
That's true.
And,
That always is that second one, yeah, for safety.
So that's why the day that we were on, I think you were over at your table writing your little novel about yourself in The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
When I was doing a scene with Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
And he was going to kill me, maybe. Who knows? And I added a couple of things, what you call Dernsies.
Right.
And Quentin always encouraged me to do that. And after I did it the first time, both Kurt, not Tim Roth, he was thinking about it, but Kurt raised his hand and out loud, he said, can I ask you a question? Yeah. Quentin said, he says, why is he allowed to say stuff that isn't on the page?
Yeah.
And Quentin said, wait a second. That's why he's here.
Right.
And I'll tell you what Mr. Kazan said in his book about him. I'll tell you what Alexander Payne will tell you. Even Mr. Hitchcock would tell you if he were here. Nobody can write the shit that comes out of his mouth when the switch is on. That's why he does rehearse. That's why he'll rehearse it, but he'll never act until it's recorded. And Kurt said to him, but I can do that. And Tim was almost next to him. He said, we can do that.
Sure,
He
Tim.
said, no.
Yeah.
Evidently, I've had each year in 5 movies, and you can't do that.
I remember the look on his face.
Oh, he dropped on the floor.
Yes,
And I had to do it one more time because they laughed over it. Quentin turned to Kurt, and he said, that's what I mean.
Wow.
So now we go to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I went up to his house on Easter Sunday afternoon to read the script so he could not watch me, but he was watching me anyway. You know, you've been there.
Yeah.
And he was in his den, and I was out on the patio reading the script. And he cut me off. He said, where are you in the script? And I said, well, I'm about the point where Brad Pitt is going on a ride with a girl. And he said, well, put it down and come in here. I went in there. And he was watching me in my episode of Lancer
my God.
on the TV. And he had 6 of my, that I did with, Lee Majors and Barbara Stanley. What was that? A Big Valley.
Yeah.
And he had 6 episodes of that.
I love that
and
show.
I said, you prick, you do your homework. And he said, you know what, Bruce, when I first came here, I came here kind of trying to be an actor. And I wanted to do what you and Jack Nicholson were doing. And I had never had a long talk with him. We used to have a lunch maybe twice a year at Musso's, which went on 5 hours. But they were all just like you and I are talking now. I get on the set, and I had never met Brad Pitt. And I'd met Leo 2 or 3 times because he was up for awards the same year I was for Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
He was up for $1 million, whatever that, about the Wall Street guys,
Right.
$1 million, whatever it was. Anyway, so I got to know him a little bit there, and I knew his dad because his dad was a big animal lover and a big kind of gypsy boots guy and Echo Park and Silver Lake, you know. So the dad had hair down to his crack. You know, I mean, he had hair like our cinematographer. It was at least that long. But he had it in a ponytail. So I get on the set, And Quentin said, "Hi, Brad." I met Brad. And he said, "Now look." And Brad said, "Well, let's rehearse." And I said, "Let's just rehearse the dialogue." And he says, "Well, aren't you going to get into it?" "No." And he looked at Quentin immediately. And Quentin said, "No, he's not. He'll just rehearse the dialogue."
Yeah.
So we rehearsed the dialogue 3 or 4 times. And then we started the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he shakes me to finally wake me up. And the first thing I say to him is, I'm not sure what's going on." Brad laughed.
Oh, God.
Quentin cut the camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Said, and laughed and then couldn't say anything.
Right.
And Quentin said, "Brad, don't ever cut a camera on me again as long as you live."
Oh,
he said, "I did, you did."
Well, you remember
he said, "You did."
Tim did that on Hateful Eight, remember?
He said to Quentin, he said, "But Quentin, that's not in the script." He said,
God.
"No shit."
Oh.
He said, "That's why he's here."
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to tell everybody every time they say, "Why is he allowed to do that?"
Mm-hmm.
Because he did that. He said, "Well, it was perfect. It was right." He said, "Then why did you laugh? Why didn't you just go on?" He said, "My God," this is Brad, "I realize now what he's been doing all this time. He does what comes to him,
Mm-hmm.
but stays in the vernacular."
Yeah.
And Quentin said, "Yes." So now we started again. And same thing. And I go through the couple of things about, I don't know who the fuck you are, and so forth and so on. And then I said to Quentin, now, I never tell Quentin what it was. I just said, "Now, you're going to get some Dernsies in this beginning." He said, "You can write better than what I did?" I said, "Well, if I can't, you got take 2, right?" And he laughed. And
Yeah.
so he picks me up kind of, and I get very close to his face, and I'm, and he holds me next to his face. And I said, this is where the Dernsie started. The Quentin line was, "I don't know who the fuck you are." And that's his line. And then the Dernsie is, "But you know something? You did something for me today that really touched me. And I'm grateful to you for it because you came to see me." That's a Dernsie. It's in the movie just that way. When I was done, Brad Pitt he was standing up by then because he's leaving, comes back in the room, picks me off the fucking bed like a 2-week-old baby in his arms, kisses me on the cheek, and he said, "Thank you." He said, "That's the best lesson I've ever heard. There's nothing wrong with following your own instincts." I said, "But if you can't do it, be Alex Trebek."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go get. Why did you? You know how many times I've said that to people who commenting about my whatever I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
Michael.
The
Michael,
other
can
thing,
you try it a different way? I said, "Why don't you call Alex Trebek?"
I'm sorry?
I said the same thing has been said to me. The Alex Trebek thing. How many times have I been on a movie and I'm doing whatever I do, and someone will say, "Michael, can you do that again, but like a little bit less, little less this or that?" And I'll say, "Well, if you wanted that, then maybe you should have called Alex Trebek." and the other story you told me about,
well, I mean, Alex Trebek
it's true. Act. No,
he
exactly.
Does game shows.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point of it. It's like, why did you guys call me?
I was so lucky. At the very beginning, I got taught that it's okay to do deal with the behavior before the dialogue.
I never did the dance scene in Reservoir Dogs. I never rehearsed it a single time until the day we shot it. And Quentin never made me do it. Every time we got to that point of rehearsal, I would say, "Look,
well, that's the first time I really
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do."
I was aware of how good you were, or I'd seen you other times, but never featured like that, where you were a star of the movie, And what I noticed in Reservoir Dogs was you were always there, even when the camera wasn't on you, but you were in the background or something. Well, say hello to the general in the fucking chair. I had 11 dialogue words in a fucking movie. But I'll tell you this, there was a lot of people wondered what the general was all about because he never said shit. But his behavior.
You were very, very mysterious, man, and that's what I dug about.
You were the same way. I mean, we never knew. And my back was to you. Yeah. But I was never afraid of your character because you were legit. Because the character, for me, as I look back at the movie, I thought I was very real. You are very real every time you're on the screen. But I like Quentin because
I love him.
No matter what it is, he's looking for honesty.
Yeah.
He's looking for real behavior. But secondly, no, you, Michael Madsen, are an extremely important voice in this industry until the day you quit. And after that, unfortunately, like me, you'll become even more important because we're leaving some shit out there they won't forget.
Wow. That's quite a statement, Bruce. I respect you and I love you. I love you, you goddamn it.
I would look over at you certain days and see you there, and it's what makes the texture to your character. I told Quentin this when I saw the movie. I said, the thing about Michael is he looks like he feels he doesn't belong. And that's an individual showing us a malevolence that might be there, and if we tap it, get out of town because he's going to clean the street. And he said, well, that's what I get from him. He is the silent guy. In other words, I said, well, he's like Spencer Tracy without being Spencer Tracy. I don't know if Spencer Tracy was honest in his work or not. I do know that he was very good in Judgment at Nuremberg.
Yeah.
And he made me believe that he was that guy. And I don't have a lot of guys I can look back on. I'll leave you with this. I'll go to see a movie, or I'll watch a movie on television, a whole movie for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I see that moment, and that's why Michael Parks and other people fell in love with what they saw Jimmy Dean do. Right. Because he was a master of a moment.
You know, Michael Parks was originally supposed to be Bud in Kill Bill.
Only because he was Jimmy Dean.
Yeah, he looked exactly like him. It was scary.
You know, I mean, he would do shit that Edna Ferber didn't write some of the shit he said in that movie.
He was supposed to be Bud in Kill Bill. And Quentin, asked me to play Bud. And I said, sure. And he said, well, I got a big problem, Michael. And I said, what would that be? And he said, well, I already gave the part to Michael Parks. But now I have to tell him that it's going to be you because I want you to be Bill's brother, Bud. And I said, wow, Quentin, wow, and what are you going to do? And then he called me and he goes, I got the perfect idea. He goes, I'm going to give Michael Parks 2 parts. He can be the sheriff, and then later on, he's the guy in the woman in the house of ill repute where Uma goes looking for David. And so, Michael, the 2 times we met, he wasn't very fond of me. I got the feeling. I think he really wanted to play Bud, and was disappointed when it was traded to me. But he's in. That's why he has 2 roles, and what a wonderful presence he has. But you nailed exactly what his whole thing was, So I want to wrap up talking to Bruce about what winning awards means to him, and in particular, what it was like to receive his star on the Hollywood Boulevard Walk of Fame. Because Bruce is not the only one in his family who has one. Turns out he's in good company with his own daughter, Laura Dern. and his ex-wife, Diane Ladd.
I did do one thing that Laura and her mother and I all got stars on Hollywood Boulevard the same day.
Oh, fuck.
And what we
Good
didn't
for
know
you.
then, but we know now, Laura and Diane Ladd and Bruce Dern are the only family in the history of Hollywood to all have stars on Hollywood Boulevard. There's plenty of other families, but never mother, father, child.
I got to get one of those one of these days, my friend.
And so he said to me, anyway, when we got our star,
That's a cool story. That's a cool story.
I had Joe Dante presented me. I love Joe. I've done a bunch of movies for him. He's a really good guy. And so he directed a movie I did called The Burbs with Tom Hanks and three or four others I did, but he presented me. Diane was presented by Della Reese.
Oh my goodness, from Perry Mason.
Laura was presented by David Lynch.
Oh,
so Gil Garcetti was then not the asshole. He was the asshole then. He's still an asshole. But he was the guy who was the Hollywood city councilman.
Yeah, I remember.
So he says to me at the end of getting my star, he says, well, Bruce, what does this all mean to you? And I had written a book 4 years earlier. I think you read it. Didn't you read it or not? It doesn't matter. It's called Things I've Said But Probably Shouldn't Have. Anyway, in the book, I end the book with the same thing I said to him. I said, you know what? What this says to me, aside pissing off about 900 people standing out there, God knows why, blocking traffic and wondering who these assholes are up there getting some kind of Mickey Mouse award. And aside from that, I think what it means to me is that a bunch of folks got together and they said Bruce Dern could play.
Yeah.
And that's all it ever meant to me. I don't want to be the best. I don't want to be this or that. Sure, I love awards. And the other thing, I get a little embarrassed about being called a legend because when my generation first got here, we got a chance to work with the fucking legends. Trust me.
Oh, you did.
Forget about killing John Wayne.
You were on C Hunt for Christ's sake. You were in Route 66. I mean,
they were bigger than life. They were bigger than life.
Yeah.
Because no one knew what they did after school.
That's because there was no internet. Nobody had cell phones.
And right. And the second thing is,
and there was no TMZ either.
They always encourage us to push the envelope.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you get them, I get them, Clint gets them, Bert got them before he went. Jack could get them, but he doesn't want to. So anyway, the point is that you can't be a legend today.
Well,
and
it's getting
just
complicated.
The fact, what did you get here for? Yeah. I got here so folks, there would be a few folks that would remember I could bring it every time.
I was with Dennis Hopper when he got his star on the sidewalk, and I went to the event when they gave it to Dennis, and he only
we're right
had about
in front of the W Hotel.
He only had about 2 weeks to live at that moment, and I remember strangely, we were making this movie.
Where are you?
I don't have one of those yet. No, I don't, Bruce. I hate to.
Oh my God! And the fact that you're not on the boulevard is shameful and disgusting.
Well, thank you, Bruce. I mean,
Pee Wee fucking Herman is on the boulevard.
And Kermit the Frog.
Miss Vicky is on the boulevard.
My God.
Give me a fucking break.
Yeah, Bruce, I remember talking to Dennis about 2 years before that. And he says, "I'll never get one of those, man." And I said,
you'll get one. I am so proud to be a friend of yours, to be able to say I love you, and I feel you feel the same about me, and we still have shit that we can get done together.
You're fucking right.
Doing something.
Yeah.
Above everything else, I revere you and respect you beyond anything you will ever give yourself credit for. And why? Because you are willing to gamble on yourself.
When I can afford
and
it.
you think you should be noticed. Well, I felt it all my career because of what I was trying to do, and it wasn't until Nebraska. And then what did they say? Who knew? Oh my God! And be happy. And everybody I mentioned in your family, particularly the stand-in for Jackie Earl Haley and Dale Locust, tell him that. Tell them all that I am proud to know you, and I'm proud the way your family has managed to stick together. Mine did not.
Bruce, I will give everybody your messages, of course. And
Okay,
I'll
Bob.
be very happy to hear from you.
And let's talk.
Yeah, God bless you, man.
Okay, bud. I love you,
Take
Michael.
it easy, Bruce. Be good. Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Adios. Oh, my gosh. Good Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Bruce Dern on my show, American Badass. I hope you guys out there listening enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. I could talk for hours to Bruce about his experience and his life, and I guess for me, if there's only one thing to take away from our conversation, wherever you are and whatever you do, I hope it reminded you just how important it is to keep it real. And people use it as a throwaway sometimes, and I think that's too easy. Especially these days with social media, but it's important. And I think people like Bruce and Quentin are the living proof of this. So thanks for listening. On my next episode, I'm going to be speaking to Tom Arnold, also a great friend of mine. We made a really funny Christmas picture together, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I hope you'll come back and tune in to American Badass. If you like the show, please subscribe on Apple or Spotify, and feel free to rate and review. I'd love to hear what you think, or follow this podcast on social media. And I hope you listen next week.